Umoja debate tournament for our semifinal round, and we're excited to have you all here today. My name is Allison Grigsby, and I'm going to be the moderator for this round. Before we begin, actually another quick announcement. A student was asking if we were able to do a quick audio recording of the debate tournament, and we just need consent from everybody in the room. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Any objections? All right, perfect.
Can you raise the mic? You have to turn it on and pop it and then not touch it once you
Yeah,
start.
yeah, but so with recordings, you have to be able, you have to turn it on, prompt it, or put it up, or prompt it, excuse me, and then just make sure it's not touched throughout the debate. So before we begin, I'd like just the judges to briefly introduce themselves.
My name is Jasmine Tarleton. I'm a debate coach for American Union, or I was. And also a community college student doing criminal justice. So yeah, that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Casca. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, been doing that for 28 and a half years, and I just got appointed by the governor to be a judge in the Wayne County Circuit Court, which I begin at the end of this month.
Hi, I'm John Ted's basically aspiring to be like these individuals next to me, but I'm from Detroit. I own a nonprofit called Project Boss Up, and I've been working in education for like the last 10 years. So, whether it's high school administrator, youth mentorship, and all those different things.
Thank you for that. I guess I also feel like I should probably mention, I did do policy debate back in high school, so this is very similar to me and in a lot of ways unique. Graduated from U of M, did poli-sci stuff, so really glad to be here today. Now, next, I'd like for our students to introduce themselves. So the students who will be speaking today, please state your full name, your school, and which side of the debate you're on.
My name is Adrian Warwick. I'm from Henry Ford. I'm a grade 11. I'm Anthony P. from Henry Ford, and I'm a grade 11.
All right, great.
Hello, I'm Dallas Young. I'm in 11th grade currently from Renaissance, and I'm on the negative side.
My name is Reagan Walker. I'm from Renaissance High School. I'm in 10th grade, and I'm second negative.
Thank you. Coaches for competing teams, can you just please raise your hand or stand to be acknowledged by the spectators and the judges? Coach. All right, great. So we will now be ready to begin, well, this will be the semifinals, so not necessarily round one. Need to double check the resolution for this round's debate. I took a picture of it. Resolved, forming a Pan-African Congress offers stronger leverage for Black unions and the diaspora that obtain greater UN voting power. And representing the affirmative side, we have Henry Ford High School, and on the negative side, we have Renaissance High School. So, let's have a great debate, and good luck to both teams. I'll be addressed over there as your timekeeper. So, the first, it's time for the first affirmative construction speech. Please go to the podium, and you have 4 minutes. Your timer will begin when you say the first one.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I am Anthony Peete, representing Henry Ford High School on the affirmative side of today's debate. Now, as Pan-African leader Dr. Arianka said in 2021, Africa does not need a voice at the UN table. Africa needs to build its own table. First, I'll present our value, then some historical context, and finally prove my case with 3 contentions. Imagine a neighborhood trying to build a school, but every decision from the blueprint to the bell schedule is designed by outsiders. That's the reality Black nations and the diaspora face when we rely on the UN gaining more votes in their system doesn't equal power. But forming a global Pan-African Congress means we write our own rules. That's why our value today is self-determination, the power of people to shape their own destiny. If we can prove that a Congress gives Black people more practical and political control, then we win the round. Let's start with a little background. History proves Pan-Africanism's success. Look at the 1945 Pan-African Congress, which brought together voices from the continent, from the Caribbean to the US and European diaspora. Those leaders with that unity went on to address struggles within independence, civil rights movements, economic and cultural institutions, and so much more. Since the 1960s, Black nations won their independence from colonial control, but the UN has denied their influence, which leads me to my first contention. The UN structure silences African voices. The United Nations gives the illusion of equal representation, but real power lies with the Security Council, especially its 5 permanent members: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. These nations hold veto power, meaning they can block any resolution, even if every other country supports it. Out of 193 seats in the UN, 54 of them are African, yet none of them have permanent Security Council seats or veto power. This means over a quarter of the world's nations are effectively powerless in the body where decisions on war, sanctions, and global peace are made. Increasing voting power in General Assembly changes nothing in the Security Council, where real decisions happen. We just be leaving. Contention 2, Pan-African unity empowers independent policymaking. A Pan-African Congress enables collaboration across borders between Africa, the Caribbean, and the diaspora, which gives Black people the chance to control our own destiny. Again, self-determination. We can look to the example of the African Union, which was formed in 2002 to build political and economical integration. The current AU chair stated, it's, quote, it's our motto, African solutions to African problems. We can look to the example of the according to the International Monetary Fund, before the AU, 80% of decisions affecting African economies and peacekeeping came from the European Union, or IMF. Now, Africa has its own Peace and Security Council, its own climate policy, its own agreements on free democratic elections, its own human rights agreements, and its own Center for Disease Control. Imagine expanding all those black nations. That would be real power, the ability to determine our own collective health, governments, diplomacy, environment, and more. That would be self-determination. Contention 3, a global Congress builds economic resilience. Okay, judges, we have made it clear why you must vote affirmative. In today's round, the UN offers recognition. A Congress offers transformation. Black people need to build our own table, not beg for seats at another. Thank you. Please vote affirmative. I'm looking for time now.
If it's time for negative cross-examination, you will have 2.5 minutes, and your time will start when you ask your first question.
Could you break down the UN structure?
The UN structure, the United Nations is all of the continents coming together to sort of make like a democracy in a way, coming together to decide how the global, very important things, global trade, wars, things like that. You know, it's a way for the continents to communicate.
Could you explain to me the structure of the Security Council?
I can explain to you I can't explain to you the structure of the Security Council, but I can explain to you the importance of the Security Council. The Security Council is the Security Council itself is a global. The Security Council itself is an important part of the UN where they focus on specifically the wars and the defenses and military trade. So the Security Council holds obviously a lot of power within the UN. So Africa being a part of it is great, but they're not a part of Department 5.
What are the countries in Department 5?
I believe I stated there's the US, there's the United Kingdom, there's China, there's Russia. There's China, there's Russia, and I believe I'm forgetting one, but
It's
France.
Okay, thank you. But how would this Pan-African Congress differ from the African Union?
It would be an example of unity. It would be more self-controlled and give them more self-determination and independence.
Could you describe to me how would legislation be set forth by this proposed basically, what is your solution for the Pan-African Congress? What might it look like?
What might the Pan-African Congress look like?
Yes.
I'm assuming. Well, I'm not in obviously not in their shoes, but I am assuming that it would be a lot like the UN, but just the African continent. It would be more independent, self-determination.
Very good, thank you. It is now time for the negative constructive speech. You will have 4 minutes, and the time will start when you ask your first question. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, fellow debaters and judges. My name is Dallas Young. We, the Negative Team, strongly believe that forming a global Pan-African Congress does not offer stronger leverage for black nations in their diaspora than obtaining greater UN voting power. Please keep in mind for this argument, I'll be abbreviating Pan-African Congress as PAC and the African Union as the AU. Furthermore, I'll be using the AU as a tangible example of how a PAC will likely look, since one obviously doesn't exist yet. This is possible because of the similar goals of African unity and reputation and the fact that both involve many of the same nations. My first contention, lesser authority of Pan-African Congresses. Based on the AU, a PAC won't have the authority to properly enforce its decisions like the UN does. Under Chapter 7, Articles 41 and 42 in the UN Charter, if the Security Council wills it, member states can apply measures such as completely or partially interrupting trade relations to punish countries that don't follow the law they say. If these actions don't work, actions with air, sea, or land forces are permitted. Thus, binding legal authority is given to those in the Security Council. According to Christian Weiss, the AU has the right to intervene in its member states, but only in grave circumstances, such as when genocides are happening, not when the law they set is broken. If the AU, and by extension the PAC, can't use military intervention when the laws are being broken, do they truly have binding legal authority? However, increasing the voting power of African states in the UN could allow increased power through the already established power of the UN. My second contention, stronger development financing. If Pan-African nations are given greater voting power in the UN, they'll have a greater budget for enacting policies that will bring a stronger leverage for black nations than if a Pan-African Congress were created. Firstly, the difference in budgets. According to the Policy Center for the New South and the UN itself, in 2024, the AU had a budget of $600 million, and the UN had one of $3.59 billion. Of course, this greater budget would allow the UN to accomplish more, but how does this relate to having a greater voting power? Let's consider the Millennium Development Goals. These were global goals created in 2000 that were meant to be reached in 2015. They were decided using top-down decision-making. And this essentially means go to the top, a limited group of international policymakers decided. However, due to this top-down decision-making, these goals were delegitimized and accountability was not upheld to actually accomplish these goals. Despite that, let's imagine if the nations suffering from these inequalities had more voting power in the UN. They could have proposed more relevant issues and applicable solutions, and could have properly used that massive UN budget consisting of billions of dollars to properly solve them. Because the AU, and by extension, a proposed PAC doesn't have this immense funding to accomplish this, greater UN voting power will bring more leverage to the diaspora and to black nations. My third contention, history of prior reform versus uncertainty. As shown by prior reforms of the Security Council and the General Assembly, we know that reforming the UN's voting system is possible. On the other hand, we cannot assure a PAC will be successful due to past African Congresses not bringing strong enough leverage. In 1965, an amendment to Article 3 enlarged the membership of the Security Council from 11 to 15. These changes only occurred 20 years after the UN was created. Who is to say that after 80 years of existence, reform is implausible? On the other hand, there's the PAC. According to Sahid Ajurumbi, the Pan-African conferences of the past were unable to effect significant changes, like lacked the necessary financial and political powers, and colonial powers worked against them. Let's think about this. The reimagined UN has already seen the case of Ethiopia and its involvement in organization. Most essentially, as my partner will later elaborate on, Ethiopia has involved itself thoroughly in the UN and has vouched for Pan-Africanism and pushed for independence of colonized African territories in a unique situation as its oldest state in Africa. Thank you for listening. I now stand open for cross-examination.
It is now time for the affirmative cross-examination. Your time will begin as soon as you ask your first question.
Do you have a standard for how the judge should decide who wins?
What does this have to do with the argument? With the judge or what exactly? I'm confused.
Would you like me to?
Yes, could you restate the question?
Do you have a basis on how you think the judges should vote a winner?
Judges should vote a winner based on who presents a stronger argument with more evidence and with more persuasive techniques.
Do you know what Umoja means? The word Umoja.
Can you educate me?
It means unity. And in a league built on Umoja, a unity should be the standard we judge by. My case shows the Pan-African Union created that unity. What does your case have to do with unity?
Well, as we already seen with the case of Ethiopia, although I wasn't necessarily going to get to it, Ethiopia has involved itself thoroughly in the UN and has vouched for Pan-Africanism and pushed, as I stated before, essentially. And by doing so, because it pushed for Pan-Africanism, it pushed for these ideals to be set in the UN. So having Ethiopia at the top like that united them together. Not saying that a PAC couldn't also do that, but of course there's the other reasons as to why I stated. Yeah.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It is now time for the second affirmative constructive speech. You will have 4 minutes, and the time will start when you say your first word.
If your house is burning, you don't hand the hose to the arsonist, you kick down the door and save your people. For black nations and all the diaspora, a Pan-African Congress isn't just a solution, it's our water, our ladder, and our escape from a system that has been watching us burn for centuries. In our first speech, we showed how the 1945 Pan-African Congress is a global fire, uniting voices from Africa, the Caribbean, and the U.S. to spark independence, civil rights, and cultural pride. The wave didn't come from the UN, it came from us, the black community, bold, united, and unstoppable. My name is Adriel Moore, and I proudly affirm the resolution forming a Pan-African Congress offers a stronger leverage for black nations in the diaspora and obtaining greater UN voting power. Our value is self-determination, the ability of black people globally to shape our destinies. Judges, in this speech, I'll strengthen our case with sharper evidence, take down my opponent's points, and show you exactly why we win. Because we offer the most power, and the biggest impact, and the clearest vision for real change. Extended contention 1, the UN silences African voices. In 2024, Sudan begged for help. 14 African countries said yes, but one outside power, Russia, vetoed it. No aid. People died. This isn't new. In Ethiopia's Tigray War, in Haiti's crisis, and the Congo's ongoing exploitation, the UN turned their back. In 2005, Africa asked for 2 permanent seats on the Security Council. The permanent 5 said no. Today, over 90% of vetoes block African or Caribbean voices. That's not justice, it's silence. A Pan-African Congress was played by our own rules. No vetoes, no outsiders deciding our fate. Just us, the black community, standing up for our own. Extended contention 2, a Pan-African unity gives us real power. We've already proven what happens when we take our future in our own hands. In 2022, the African Commission defended protests right across the continent. The next year, 15 nations said no to tech control from China and the US, cutting foreign tech use by 19% in just 2 years. Without the UN's approval, Africa built a peace council, climate plan, disease center, and a cohesive free trade zone. Now imagine the same power in Detroit, Accra, Kingston, and Johannesburg. One system, one voice, and one future. A Pan-African Congress makes that real. Now my partner didn't get a chance to say his third contention, but I'm going to still extend on it. Extended contention 3, a global Congress grows black wealth. The UN's own report says regional unity beats global dependence. This means black freedom is freedom for all. The African Free Trade Agreement lifted 30 million people out of poverty, but it leaves out the diaspora? That's a mistake. Black communities in places like Atlanta, Detroit, and Kingston send over $50 billion to Africa each year, more than all foreign aid. A Pan-African base could flip that money into schools, roads, and tech on our own terms. During COVID-19, Africa waited over a year for vaccines. Next time, we don't wait. We create our own rules. This extends nationally worldwide for all black people. Now, not to attack my opponents. Before I respond to my opponent, let's make one thing clear. Waiting on the UN means waiting on people who don't put us first. A Pan-African Congress gives us power to act for ourselves. No waiting, just action. Now, while the negatives say that an African Congress doesn't have the complete unity or doesn't have enough support and doesn't have enough money, our case shows that a Pan-African Congress builds economic strength without begging for aid or recognition. In my first construction, my partner explained how the African Continental Free Trade Area is projected to lift 30 million people out of poverty. And I added that the diaspora sends $50 billion annually to Africa, according to World Bank 2024. And a Congress would turn into investment, not just charity. The UN doesn't do that. Our Congress gives us tools to build wealth, not wait for it. This debate isn't about the UN's processes. It's about what truly gives black people control. Self-determination through Pan-African unity is that control. We're not just asking you to look at Africa. We're asking you to look toward a future shaped by us, not handed to us. Judges, I urge you to vote for affirmative. Thank you.
It is now time for the negative cross-examination. Your time will begin as soon as you ask your first question. You have 2.5 minutes.
Okay. Cool. Are you aware of diplomatic community? Do you know what that is?
Could you elaborate?
Do you know what diplomatic community is? I'm just asking. Okay. So diplomatic community is basically protections that certain organizations have, usually based off of them being world-renowned, them having recognition. They gain these diplomatic communities, meaning that they can send out envoys, and if they were to break the law while in the process of this mission, they would not be held susceptible to breaking that law. So you said no waiting, just action. So how do you address the detrimental effects of what action without protection could cause? So you're saying that the Pan-African Congress has, okay, so do you think that the Pan-African Congress can safely conduct missions, my bad. Do you think that the Pan-African Congress can safely conduct missions that are effective?
All I know is that when we tried to ask for recognition in the UN, in 2005, Africa literally asked for 2 permanent seats on the Security Council. The permanent 5 said no. Today, over 90% of vetoes block African Caribbean voices. That means we have to create something different, something for us, something for black people as a whole.
So when you say that, are you aware of the system of the UN?
I'm aware that black voices are silenced. That's what's important.
No, but you said that they asked for 2 permanent seats in the Security Council. Are you aware of the structure in the UN?
They asked for 2 permanent seats on the council
You
because
can't
they're
have a permanent seat in the Security Council. So are you aware of the structure in the UN?
all I'm aware is Africa is trying to fight for its control, and Pan-Africanism as a whole is trying to find unity and a space that all people across the diaspora are able to find unity through Pan-Africanism.
Okay, so question, if you don't know the structure of the United Nations, how can you criticize it?
The United Nations have been oppressing the black nations since it
Okay,
started.
but you're
But
criticizing
that
the system of the UN. I'm sorry to interrupt you, I'm very sorry.
no, I can elaborate though. What I'm saying is the Pan-Africanism and black unity is creating a system for all. If that means separating, then that means separating. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Alright, it's time for the second negative constructive. You have 4 minutes, and your time will start as soon as you speak your first word.
Good afternoon, fellow debaters and judges. My name is Reagan Walker, and representing Renaissance High School, and today my partner Dallas and I stand before you in firm negation of today's resolution. I'd like to clarify that for the sake of time, I'm going to be referring to United Nations as UN and the Pan-African Congress as PAC. Alright? So while the vision of a global PAC is admirable, we argue that obtaining greater UN voting power is a more effective and strategic route to securing real global influence, resources, and policy change for black nations. For my first contention, leverage requires legitimacy recognized by the existing world system. While the PAC may have symbolic significance, it lacks the legal authority and binding influence that the UN has had since its founding. The UN provides institutional pathways for black nations to influence international peace and security policies. As an example, Ethiopia became a member of the United Nations Security Council in 2017, but it's been a member of the United Nations since 1945. Ethiopia has historically relied on diplomacy to exert influence at the regional, continental, and global level. In the UN, it has promoted Pan-Africanism and independence for colonized territories. Ethiopia's commitment to international peace has a long history. In the early 1950s, its troops joined a multinational UN peacekeeping force in the Korean War. Similar interventions were also made in the 1960s during the Congo conflict. It is currently the second largest contributor to UN peacekeeping operations. Ethiopia's long-standing involvement in the UN demonstrates how meaningful engagement it translates to real influence. This underscores why gaining greater UN voting power is more strategically valuable to black nations than forming a separate PAC. Black nations must place themselves within international institutions where their voices can affect actual resolutions, not just discussions. For my second contention, the United Nations is where global power is centralized. It must be beneficial for African nations to work in an environment alongside the UN to access funding and resources. Greater voting power within the UN directly leads to a greater ability to influence decisions. When countries have stronger representation within the UN, they gain the ability to push for reforms in global trade, better climate policies, and advocate for human rights globally. A Pan-African Congress may gather the voices of a scattered people, but without roots in the structures of a global power, they remain heard perhaps, but unable to change their course. According to SDGs.un.org, in 2015, the UN adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call to action by all countries developed and developing in a global partnership. These goals are set to be placed in 2030, so they're planning way ahead. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. These goals directly align with those of African nations. Granting voter power and representation within the UN provides African nations with the tools to shape global priorities. In contrast, while a Pan-African Congress may serve symbolic or regional purposes, it lacks real power. For my third contention, a topic my partner previously touched on, UN membership grants diplomatic privileges and immunities for representatives. Diplomatic immunity is important for the UN to be in possession of because civil disobedience and change always comes at a price. For example, during the 60s era sit-ins, activists were susceptible to both violence and arrest. According to a study from ODU.edu, it is vital for diplomats serving in a foreign state to be protected in some way from repercussions in order to maintain open lines of communication between states, even in times of tension or conflict. The diplomatic immunity prevents potentially hindering the UN's ability to effectively represent their countries and engage in negotiations. In conclusion, the United Nations are equipped with international recognition, resources, and the power of immunity. This is why it's imperative to vote negative. And that's enough for cross-examination.
Perfect. Affirmative, you will have 2.5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Okay. So I'm gonna run under here, just kind of like this. All right. So you said that the UN's leverage requires legitimacy, or the Pan-African Congress leverage requires legitimacy.
Yes.
All right. And you stated that Ethiopia became part of the Security Council.
Yes.
Yeah, you said so. Okay. And then you say that the Pan-African Congress is admirable, but it's unsustainable.
I did not say unsustainable.
You said that it's not going to work, basically.
I said they lack real power, as of now.
All right, thank you. And you said that the UN's goals align with the Pan-African Congress's goals?
Yes.
Okay, and you said the UN is.
Wait, no. I did not say the UN's goals. I said the sustainable development goals.
Wait, so you. Wait a minute. Okay, that's fine. The UN is. You said the UN is equipped with resources to help our nations.
Yes.
Okay. So, do you believe in empowering the Black community?
Yes.
Okay. So, would you also believe that the Black community should do everything in their power to protect themselves?
Okay, yeah, I do.
So you believe that? So do you believe that having an African Congress for African rights for all Black people is empowering the Black community?
Okay, it's empowering the Black community, yes.
So
But also, they don't have the protection that they need. When I asked you earlier if you knew about the diplomatic immunity, I was basically saying that while you can form a Pan-African Congress, it is symbolic, it gives us our power back, but as of right now, we do not have the power to be safe in circumstances that we may be put in order to do.
So you would just agree that that it does affect Black community. So the Black community. So basically, you're saying that the Black community and the AU is relevant to each other.
Black community.
The Black community would be benefited by the AU.
Yes.
Okay. And all right, I'm going to go on to my next question. Do you think that the Pan-African Congress can build economic strength without begging for aid or recognition?
Do I believe that they could get what? Economic strength?
Yes. Do you believe that it can build economic strength without begging for aid or
They
recognition?
can build it, yes, but how do they have that leverage right now?
So they can build it. That's
They
what
can build it.
So yes, that's what it is.
Yes.
Okay. And do you believe that unity through a Pan-African Congress gives Black nations more control over their future, taking their future in their own hands? Do you believe that takes their future in their hands?
In our own hands, yes.
Okay, you believe that. And do you think that the UN system is broken for Black nations?
As of now.
Thank you.
It is now time for our 2-minute break. For both teams, please take this time to prepare for your rebuttals.
So I'm sorry if I actually answered the question. Can I see that? Do you have that? Can I have that picture? judges, and esteemed audience, we have laid the groundwork of this debate within these 5 contentions. Leverage requires legitimacy recognized by the existing world system. The UN is where global power is centralized. The UN offers diplomatic benefits in which the PAC cannot due to its lack of recognition. The UN possesses stronger developmental finances, and the history of the power reforms in the PAC are unreliable. Nobody here is stating that we as a people don't have the ability to form effective and credible government, but when it comes to where the power is, the UN has a strong advantage, such as its seniority and, as I mentioned, its diplomatic immunities. Now, I'd like to point out a few things that the affirmative said that I'd like to rebut. Firstly, they're criticizing they're criticizing the United Nations structure, but they can't define it. The United Nations is built within 3 separate parts. There's the P5, the Security Council, and the General Assembly. Within the Security Council, the General Assembly is elected every 2 years to be a part of the Security Council, which has 15 members. Now, they said previously, actually, as the first affirmative stated, they said something about the African nations asked for a permanent seat in the Security Council when that's just not possible because there are no permanent seats in the Security Council. I'd also like to point out that they missed their definitions and they missed their third contention. I'd also like to say that we don't believe that the UN is perfect. We do hold it accountable for its imperfections and how it has neglected the African nations that the UN is supposed to be united to protect, and that they're supposed to be benefiting, and we acknowledge that. But they said that the UN is a democracy. The UN was never a democracy, but our solution is to make the UN a democracy. So with the P5 having a power to veto bills that are passed, public policies that are passed from the Security Council, they have this overruling power that is just not fair. Now, by getting rid of that veto power, we give our African nations the chance, we give all these countries a chance to have a say in their public policies without a bigger man having the privilege to just reject them. Power concedes nothing without a demand. I implore you vote negative. Thank you.
Time for the affirmative rebuttal. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Judges, vote affirmative because we proved the truth. Representation in broken systems isn't power. Real power is control, and a Pan-African Congress puts that control directly in Black communities' hands. No vetoes, no begging, just us. In this final focus, I'll walk through the major clashes, reaffirm our value of self-determination, and show why the affirmative world gives Black nations and the diaspora more power, more unity, and more results. Let's get clear on what the debate is really about. The negative side told you that the UN is where progress happens, but they ignore the hard truth. It's also where progress is blocked. They mentioned, we gave you something different, a proof of what happens when Black people lead ourselves. From the 1945 Pan-African Congress to the AU's peace councils and free trade zones. We're arguing to reform a system that wasn't built for us. We're offering a system built by us with real power in Black communities' hands. Our value is self-determination, which I may add, the negative side did not have a value to match self-determination, so our value stands. The UN keeps decision in the hands of outsiders. 54 African nations, 0 permanent seats. Meanwhile, a Pan-African Congress would unify Africa, the Caribbean, and the diaspora, giving us the ability to set policies, build economies, and defend ourselves together. The negative says we wait for power. We say claim it by putting it in Black communities' hands. Now let's go through our contentions versus our opponents and show you why we win. So as I stated again, our value was self-determination. Our first contention, we said the UN structure silences African voices. We added the Power 5 has vetoed African nations. We stated that, and they agreed in their case, they agreed that it does, the Power 5 does not help African nations. In contention 2, we said the Pan-African Unity empowers independent policy making, and that African Union as an example can help nations within our own resources. Contention 3, we said that a global Congress builds economic resilience, and black people historically have been denied. While they may argue that that they offer stronger financing, we are saying that we're lifting 30 million people out of poverty. That's real change. They also did not give a plan for their voting power. We said that the two members were denied in 2005. They mentioned a policy back in 1965. They criticized the structure, but the P5, they criticized our structure, but the P5 never changed. We don't have a voice, and following the system, we never will. And they agree, and they haven't helped us. They haven't helped us currently, and they never helped us historically. Vote negative. Vote negative. Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating. This is really nice to hear. All right, judges, please take up to 5 minutes to independently finalize your decisions and turn in your ballots tonight.
Dude, you're so I love the direction you're taking. It's okay.
And I have heard it in front of me.
Big R for butter.
I would say I'm not the grand rebuttal. You know what I'm saying? So, just like any. That was I think it's really good. But I'm not the one who's reading. Yeah, I think so.
I was thinking that.